Level 1, pass posting a bet. You are 24 years old and you are standing at a roulette table you have visited 4 times this month, waiting for the ball to land before sliding a few extra chips onto a number that has already won. It is a small movement, a hand drifting forward half a second after it should, the kind of thing that works 9 times out of 10 because pit bosses are watching 6 tables at once and dealers are watching the wheel. It does not work the 10th time. A dealer named Ren Castillo has dealt this game for 6 years and has developed the specific, unglamorous instinct that comes from repetition. She is not looking at your chips, she is looking at your hands, and your hands moved at the wrong moment. She does not accuse you. She calls the floor. A pit boss reviews the table for 30 seconds, decides it is not worth a confrontation over $40, and quietly voids the bet, tells you the table is closing, and makes a note in a log that will sit unread for months unless your name appears in it again. That is the lesson of level 1 that nobody tells you. The casino's smallest attention is still a system, not a person. A dealer's trained hesitation, a note in a log nobody expects to reopen, and it costs the house almost nothing to notice and almost everything to let it slide twice. Level 2, card counting. You are 28. What started as one blackjack table with a favorable count becomes a rotation, 3 casinos, then 11, spread across a city you thought was big enough to get lost in. You tell yourself this isn't cheating, that counting cards is legal, that you're simply playing the odds better than the house would like. The casinos do not share your legal opinion, and more importantly, they do not need to prove intent to ask you to leave. This time the file does not sit with a dealer. It moves upstairs to a windowless room lined with monitors, where a surveillance operator named Priya Anand begins doing something the pit floor never required, cross-referencing. She pulls your buy-in history across 4 visits and notices your bet size doubling and tripling in a pattern that has nothing to do with luck and everything to do with account climbing. She runs your face, captured automatically the moment you sat down, against a shared facial recognition database several major properties subscribe to, and finds 3 more casinos where the same pattern repeats under names that don't quite match each other. The math doesn't lie even when the story does. She tells a colleague reviewing the footage late one night, though you won't hear this sentence until you're already being quietly escorted through a side door. Priya does not need to catch you cheating in any legal sense. She only needs to recognize the shape of your play, and casinos have never required proof beyond a reasonable suspicion to simply stop dealing to you. By the time you sit down at your 12th table, your photograph has already traveled to a shared industry watch list before you finish your first drink. Level 3, marked cards. You are 31. A small dab of invisible ink on the back of high cards, applied over several visits, readable only through a subtly tinted contact lens you special-ordered online. This isn't opportunism anymore, it's preparation, a system built in advance rather than improvised at the table. This draws a different kind of attention than counting ever did, because marked cards are not a legal gray area. This is a full surveillance investigation, and the difference announces itself within a single shift. A surveillance investigator named Deshaun Ruiz reviews your table not in real time but frame by frame, at a quarter speed, because something about your win rate against the dealer's up card has already flagged the pit boss's attention. He isn't looking at your face. He's looking at the cards themselves, cycling through hours of footage until he catches a half-second flash of discoloration on the corner of a jack that shouldn't be there. Within the hour, the deck is pulled from play and sent to the casino's own forensics room, where a technician confirms daub residue under ultraviolet light. You are not stopped mid-hand. You are allowed to keep playing for 2 more visits while Deshaun quietly builds a complete card-by-card record, because an accusation without documentation is just an argument, and an argument is not what shuts down a criminal case. We don't tap a shoulder until the deck agrees with us. Deshaun tells a trainee reviewing the footage beside him. You are approached in the parking garage on your 3rd visit back, before you've reached your car, with a folder of marked cards already logged as evidence. Level 4, counterfeit chips. You are 34. What began as replicating a single $500 chip using a 3D printer and a UV-reactive coating becomes a production line in your garage, dozens of chips indistinguishable to the eye, cashed in slowly across different cages over several weeks so no single transaction looks unusual. You tell yourself the casino absorbs losses like this constantly, that a few $1,000s in fake chips is a rounding error against a property's nightly volume. This comfort does not survive contact with how chip security actually works. Every legitimate casino chip carries an embedded RFID tag invisible to the eye and unreplicable without proprietary equipment you don't have access to. A cage auditor named Naomi Okafor doesn't need to examine your chips visually at all. She runs a routine RFID sweep during a nightly reconciliation and finds 41 chips that return no tag signal whatsoever, present in the count but invisible to the system that is supposed to track them. Naomi doesn't chase the chips. She pulls the cashier footage tied to each serial discrepancy and builds a timeline of exactly which teller window processed each fake, then cross-references those timestamps against player tracking card swipes to attach a face to every transaction. A chip that doesn't talk to our system isn't a chip. It's a confession waiting to be matched to a face. Naomi tells a state gaming auditor reviewing her report. You are identified not because anyone caught you caching a single fake chip, but because you cached 41 of them, and a network that quiet has no way of staying invisible once someone starts counting. Level 5, a slot machine cheat device. You are 37. A modified device slipped into a machine's coin mechanism, exploiting a known firmware flaw in an older cabinet model to force a jackpot sequence. 3 visits, 3 different casinos, 3 wins that never should have registered. This crosses a line the previous levels didn't because you are no longer beating a game, you are altering one, and that draws the attention of people whose entire job is protecting the machine itself. A gaming technician named Oscar Delgado is called in not because anyone suspects you specifically, but because the machine flagged its own jackpot as statistically anomalous, an internal audit function built into every modern slot cabinet precisely for this reason. Oscar pulls the machine's internal error log, which records every voltage irregularity down to the millisecond, and finds a spike consistent with a foreign object interrupting the coin path exactly 4 seconds before your jackpot triggered. The machine remembers everything you touched, whether you meant it to or not, Oscar explains to a state gaming lab technician reviewing the log with him. The device itself is later recovered from a pawn shop you sold it to, its serial number traced back to a supplier who, under pressure from a state investigator, hands over a shipping record with your name on it. You believed you were exploiting a flaw nobody would notice. You were, in fact, feeding data directly into the one system specifically designed to notice it. Level 6, a blackjack team. You are 40. What was once your solo counting operation has become something larger. A team of 6, a spotter signaling a big player from across the floor, a bankroll pooled and managed by someone you've never met in person. Each new player recruited feels like proof the system works, that the first successful run wasn't a fluke but a method worth scaling. This draws a different level of scrutiny than an individual counter ever could. A surveillance director named Camille Voss doesn't watch you. She watches the room because team play has a shape individual play never does. A spotter who never bets big lingering near a table. A big player who arrives mid-shoe and leaves within 20 minutes. A pattern of signals disguised as ordinary gestures that only become visible once you're looking for the choreography rather than the cards. Camille cross-references your team's faces against a shared industry database several major properties contribute to. The same kind of network Priya used 4 levels earlier, except now the search returns 6 linked profiles instead of 1, each flagged at different properties under different aliases over 18 months. You don't catch a team by watching the cards. Camille tells a new hire shadowing her that week. You catch it by watching the room stop making sense as 6 individual strangers and start making sense as one coordinated machine. Your team is quietly barred from 4 properties within the same month. Each casino notified through the shared network before your group has finished driving to the next stop on your list. Level 7, a dealer collusion ring. You are 43. What makes this level different is that the cheat no longer lives entirely on your side of the table. You've recruited a dealer, feeding you information on upcoming cards through a subtle series of physical tells built up over months of quiet trust. This is no longer a floor-level problem. It's an internal integrity investigation, and it draws in people whose job is watching the casino's own employees, not its guests. An internal investigations manager named Priyanka Sethi is alerted not by your winnings, but by a pattern in the dealer's shift assignments. An unusually high loss rate at every table this specific dealer works, regardless of which player sits down. Priyanka pulls 6 months of table-by-table financials before she ever looks at a single face, because the numbers isolate the dealer as the constant variable long before any individual player becomes a suspect. She then requests audio-capable surveillance review on that dealer's shifts specifically, a step reserved for suspected employee involvement, and within 2 shifts catches a recorded exchange of murmured numbers that don't correspond to any legitimate table protocol. The house doesn't lose money randomly, Priyanka tells a colleague reviewing the audit with her. When it loses consistently to the same seat, the story isn't luck, it's a relationship. You are separated from the dealer's shift pattern entirely once casino management quietly moves them to a different pit without explanation. The case building in silence for 3 more weeks before you are approached in a hallway you didn't know was under review. Level 8, exploiting a random number generator. You are 47. A vulnerability in an online linked slot system, a flaw in its pseudorandom algorithm that, once understood, lets you predict outcomes with enough accuracy to win consistently across a chain of properties running the same software. You tell yourself this is closer to a coding challenge than theft. You didn't steal anything, you simply understood a system better than its own designers did. The casino's cybersecurity partners do not share this framing. A digital forensics analyst named Yusuf Bakr is brought in not by a single property but by the software vendor itself. Once anomalous win patterns are flagged across multiple casinos running the same RNG build. Yusuf doesn't need to watch you play at all. He pulls the machine's seed logs, the invisible mathematical starting points that generate every random outcome, and reconstructs your win sequence backward, mapping it against the exact algorithm flaw you exploited. Randomness that can be reverse-engineered was never actually random, it was just complicated, Yusuf explains in a report that will later anchor the case entirely on math, without a single frame of you ever needing to be filmed. It takes his team 5 weeks to trace your win pattern across 11 machines in 4 states, correlated entirely through timestamped play data rather than any physical description of you. You are identified through a vulnerability report before a single investigator has ever seen your face. Level 9, a multi-property crime ring. You are 51. What you built, device manipulation, counterfeit chips, a rotating cast of accomplices, has scaled into an operation spanning 6 casinos across 3 states, moving faster than any single property's surveillance team can track alone. This requires something beyond one casino's investigation. A state gaming control board coordinator named Marcus Felt becomes the connective tissue between properties that are, on paper, competitors, but share a mutual interest in shutting your operation down before it spreads further. Marcus convenes a joint task force meeting, surveillance directors from 6 casinos in one room for the first time, comparing footage, chip serial anomalies, and RFID discrepancies side by side, discovering independently that each property had documented a piece of your operation without realizing the others held the missing pieces. No single casino can see the whole picture, Marcus tells the group during that first meeting, laying photographs from 6 different surveillance rooms across one table. That's exactly why operations like this survive as long as they do. The coordinated case that follows takes 4 months to build, culminating in simultaneous arrests timed to the same evening across 3 states so no one in your network has time to warn the others. 6 properties, 1 shared file, for months of quiet comparison that took longer to organize than your entire operation took to run. Level 10, an international casino fraud network. You are 55. An operation that has moved beyond any single country's jurisdiction. Chip fraud technology sold to operators overseas, counterfeit RFID equipment manufactured in one country, deployed in another, profits laundered through a third. This draws a response no previous level required. A global gaming security alliance, an informal but deeply networked coalition of casino intelligence units, regulators, and law enforcement liaisons across a dozen countries who share information specifically because organized casino fraud has never respected a single border. A casino intelligence liaison named Ellen Voss, stationed with an international gaming security consortium, spends over a year coordinating requests across 5 countries' regulators, each with its own legal standards for what counts as evidence. Casino fraud used to be a local problem because casinos were local, Ellen tells a colleague on a call spanning 4 time zones. Now the equipment crosses more borders than the money does, and the investigation has to move the same way. The alliance's slow, methodical intelligence sharing, built over years of cooperation on smaller, unrelated cases, is what finally connects your manufacturing operation to the chips being cached 6,000 miles away. A coordinated series of raids executed within hours of each other across 3 countries brings the operation down in a single coordinated morning, the culmination of over a year spent building relationships that had nothing to do with you until, eventually, they had everything to do with you. 10 levels, 10 different sizes of the same basic architecture. A dealer's hesitation and a global intelligence alliance are not different systems. They're the same system scaled to match the size of what it's asked to catch. The casino floor does not watch you the way a person watches. It watches you the way a structure watches, patiently, in parallel, assembling a picture one flagged chip, one reviewed frame, one shared database entry at a time, until the picture is complete enough that the final step, the tap on the shoulder, is almost an afterthought compared to everything that built toward it. If this changed how you see what happens on the other side of the cameras, share it. Subscribe if you're new here. Every week, this channel goes somewhere most people only ever imagine from the outside.